Hello. Welcome to episode 1 of Guide to Roblox GFX. I was tired of seeing so many tutorials that are unhelpful for beginners and don't even explain how to get started with rendering in Roblox, so I decided to create my own. In this episode, I'll guide you through the entire process of making your own render, step by step. This tutorial is very beginner-friendly, and in the first half of the video, I'll cover the absolute basics. Let's get started. To begin, we need to download Roblox Studio. To do this, go to the Create tab and click the Edit in Studio button under any of your games. If you don't have Roblox Studio installed, an installer will be prompted. Let's download Blender. Blender is a free and open-source 3D software that can be used for many purposes, such as real-life movie animation, 3D modeling UGC, or, in our case, Roblox renders. Start by going to blender.org and downloading Blender 4.3, which we'll be using today. I'm using an Apple Silicon Mac, so I'll be downloading a different version. However, if you're a Windows user, you'll see the Windows version of Blender instead of the macOS version displayed on my screen. We will now export our rig to Blender. In this video I will be using a Roblox plugin called Avatar Importer by Citronix. Download the plugin or use a familiar one, it doesn't really matter. Once that's done, make sure the avatar is spawned at origin, meaning the avatar you've spawned touches the base plate and the legs aren't clipping through it. This is important later on so we can perfectly align the hats of our character in Blender. Finally, right-click the character in Explorer and save it as an OBJ. Pick a file path that you'll be able to find on your desktop later when we are in Blender. We now need a Blender rig to work with. A Blender rig is essentially a skeleton with its own bones, which can be moved to create a pose or animate the character. I personally use a Blender add-on called Roblox Starter Rigs by SoftGB, as I believe this Blender add-on offers the best Roblox rigs available. They are also very easy to edit, which will be useful as you become more proficient in Blender and want to explore advanced features, such as adding 3D clothing to your character. To download the rigs, search for SoftGB Starter Rigs on Google and click the first link. The rigs are completely free, but you can tip the creator if you'd like. You will need to enter your email first. After that, you can complete the checkout and download the add-on. Before we install the add-on, welcome to Blender. In Blender, we have 3 render engines, Eevee, Workbench, and Cycles. Today, we will be using Cycles. However, I will skip this as this part is recorded after the video because I forgot to mention it while recording. Don't be scared if your PC sounds like... That's quite normal with Blender. To move, hold the middle mouse button or hold Shift plus middle mouse button. To fly around freely, press Shift plus tilde, then use the scroll wheel to adjust your speed. Once that's done, you need to install the add-on. Go to Edit, then Preferences, then navigate to the Add-ons tab. Click the arrow on the right and select the option to import from your disk. In the pop-up menu, locate and select the add-on you just downloaded to complete the installation. I will personally not be doing that as I already have it installed. Afterward, I recommend verifying that the add-on has been successfully added by searching for its name in the add-ons menu. We have successfully installed the add-on. Now, let's import our rig. From the add-on menu on the right, locate and select the Roblox Starter Rigs add-on. If you don't see the menu, press N on your keyboard to make it visible. In the Starter Rigs menu, you'll find 7 rigs to choose from. All of these rigs are ready to use at any time. Select the rig that matches the avatar shape of your character, then click on it to import the rig. My character is blocky, so I will choose the blocky rig. After that, select the head, then split the screen into two parts by hovering your mouse over the edges of the viewport, holding and dragging. Press N to hide the menu on the left panel. Afterwards, change one of the panels into a shader editor. Press N to hide the menu on the left panel. As you can see, there's something called HD faces here. These faces are part of the Roblox Starter Rigs package, and essentially, they are higher quality Roblox faces. The default Roblox faces are quite pixelated, which is more noticeable in renders than inside Roblox itself. In this episode, I will not be using these. So, to remove the HD faces, I will select the nodes inside the frame, delete them, and then reconnect the character texture to the base texture in the principled BSDF. We will now add the character texture to the rig. Press X to remove the default texture on this rig, then click on the File Explorer icon to select your own custom texture. Here, you'll find all the character textures, including hat textures. We need to select the character's texture. Choose the one that is clearly the character texture based on the preview. We have successfully imported our texture onto the rig. My avatar has headless, so I'll be removing the head. To do this, go into the Outliner Blender's Explorer, right-click the driver in the camera to delete it as I do on the video, then disable its visibility in both renders and the viewport. You can delete the head regardless of whether your original character has headless or not. Character exporting was only to obtain the character texture and hats for later import. You may skip this part if you don't want to add headless. It's time to import the Roblox hats onto the rig. To do this, go to File, Import Wavefront.obj, which is the file type Roblox uses for exporting assets. In the pop-up menu, locate the assets you previously saved, then click the Import Wavefront.obj button. You will now see a bunch of files in the Outliner Blender's Explorer. The ones named after your Roblox username are body parts, while the ones named handle are your hats. Since we already have the body parts, we'll delete the objects named after your Roblox username. We've successfully imported our character into Blender. However, as you can see, the hats are not connected to the rig. To attach them, select the rig and switch to pose mode at the top. Then, select a hat from the outliner and choose the bone you want to bind it to. An example, the bone responsible for moving the hat. For example, a hat accessory should be connected to the head bone, while an arm accessory should be connected to an arm bone. To bind the hats to a bone, select the hat and the desired bone, then press Ctrl+P and choose bone. I will now repeat this with every single accessory. While I do this, let me introduce myself. I'm a freelance graphics artist with about 6 years of experience, and I've worked with several popular groups, including Iron Man Universe, Colored Guns Galactic Republic, and Campfire Labs. I'm also a web development student and own a domain called tacticalgex.com, which I'll link in the description. Back to Roblox, I'm also exploring investment and game acquisition. This concludes the rig setup. However, as you can see, our outliner is quite unorganized, so let's move the hats into the same collection. To do this, simply select all the hats in the outliner, then drag them into the collection where your rig is located. This will keep everything organized, allowing you to easily find and modify the hats within the rig in the future. You can now move your rig's limbs by switching to pose mode, selecting a bone, and using the rotate tool to adjust its position. If the toolbar isn't visible, press T on your keyboard to show it. If you're unsatisfied with your pose, you can press A to select all bones, then right-click and choose Clear User Transforms to reset the rig to its default position. Go back to the object mode when you are ready. I will now explain all the light types in Blender. To add a new light, press Shift+A, then go to Light, and from there you can select one of 4 light types. However, there are also environment textures, also known as HDRI, which I will explain later. In this video, I'll be using only the sunlight and area light, but I'll explain all the types. A point light is a light that emits from a specific point, more precisely, from a sphere. Its size and light softness can be adjusted in the properties, just like any other light type, except for HDRI. A spotlight emits light from a specific point and is often used to simulate light from sources like street lamps. I won't explain the other two light types right now, but I will cover them as I use them during the render process for a clearer explanation. I will spawn a sunlight now, and I recommend you do the same and follow the guide step by step. Once you finish the video, feel free to experiment with the other light types on your own. A sunlight emits light from the direction you set it to, rather than from an object like the other three light types. No matter where you move the light, it will always emit light from the same direction, just like the real sun. I will rotate the sunlight by 90 degrees on the x-axis to create the popular rim light effect. Then, I will move the sunlight out of the way so it doesn't distract me. I will now go into the light settings and adjust the light power to 20 to achieve the crisp rim light effect everyone wants. You can also adjust the angle, as I do, to make the rim light spread more over the character. I'm also going to adjust the rim light color to something cooler, like blue. Right here, I have also decided to crank up the power to 50 instead of 20. I will now spawn an area light to enhance the rim light we've created using the sunlight. Right here, I adjusted its size by holding and dragging it when it appeared yellow, but you can also press S to scale. I will now move it by pressing G and placing it behind my character. You can click on the yellow dot that appears next to the area light when it's selected to adjust the direction it lights up more easily. I cranked up the power of the area light to 1000 watts, and I also changed its color to match the rim light for obvious reasons. I forgot to mention, in this video, I'll be using the Cycles render engine, not Eevee. Right here, I realized I've been using Eevee the whole time, so I'm going into my scene properties and changing it to Cycles instead. Depending on what's better on your device, the CPU or the GPU, set it as your rendering device. I will be changing the area light to 5000 watts for a crisper rim light. Please note that higher is not always better, and in your specific scene, a lower light may work better. For my scene, I decided to use a stronger light. I will be adjusting the spread. Spread basically dictates the direction, in degrees, that the light is allowed to spread from. Please don't get overwhelmed with the amount of information in this video, as I'm guiding you step by step to ensure you successfully make your first GFX after watching it. I will change the area light shape to a disc for a smoother fall-off. I will now duplicate it all around the character by pressing Shift plus D. I will now make a random S pose for the sake of this video. I will now add an HDRI texture. An HDRI texture is essentially an image that wraps around the world, casting realistic light. Press the yellow dot over there, where I do, and then choose Environment Texture. The other options are essentially different ways of lighting up your scene, which I won't discuss in this video. You can get HDRI textures or more on Polyhaven for free. Pick the one you like from the website, and then download the HDR version of it. HDR versions are just better. Why? I do not know, but they usually weigh less too. Get a 4K version. Anything above 4K is an overkill. I will now import the HDRI texture I just downloaded into Blender by going into World Settings and then pressing Open next to Environment Texture. I don't think anyone will want the background from the HDRI texture, so to hide it, go into Camera, scroll down to Film, and then check the Transparent option. Next is Color Management, which you can find in the same tab. The newer ones, which I also recommend you use, are AGX and Chrono's PBR Neutral, introduced in Blender 4.2 LTS. Sometimes, Chrono's PBR Neutral colors can be overkill for your scene, so going with AGX is generally safer in my opinion. However, I always recommend checking whether Chrono's PBR Neutral might be a better fit for your specific scene every time you make a GFX. I personally went with AGX, but now that I'm editing this video, I'd probably go for Chrono's PBR Neutral. Make sure to change the look of the color management, which is a setting right below the camera management types, for more or less contrast. Under that, you can find the exposure and gamma sliders, which I recommend you play with too. Right here, I'm adjusting the roughness of our character texture. As the name suggests, it controls the roughness of the texture. If you want the popular glossy effect seen in most viral TikTok renders, set the roughness to 0 and increase the metallic value a little bit. Finally, we will add a camera, which dictates what we want to render. Press Shift+A and then select the camera from the menu. I will now press 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view. If you don't have a numpad, you can also press the camera button on the right. Afterwards, I pressed Shift+tilde to fly with the camera. I then positioned the camera in a nice spot to render the character from. Then, I went to the scene settings and adjusted the render resolution. Afterwards, I adjusted the pose so the character was looking at the camera. Before we render, we need to adjust a few settings, such as the denoise settings. After rendering, almost no render will be 100% clean, it will likely be noisy. To fix this, we are using a denoiser to remove the noise. I recommend you copy my settings here and use them for all your renders. I believe these are the best denoising settings you can have. Change the sample count to 1500. Anything above 1500 is overkill in most scenarios. Anything below 1500 and above 300 should be fine too. However, to make sure I lose zero detail, I use 1500, especially because my PC is fast enough to render a scene with 1500 samples in seconds anyway. It is time to render. To render your image, go into Render and then press Render Image. Afterwards, wait for your image to be fully rendered. Once it's done, you can save your image by going into Image and then selecting Save Image As. Choose the file path where you wish to save the render. One common mistake beginner GFX artists make is messing up the character texture, causing it to look like this. To fix this, go back to Roblox Studio and ensure you export it properly as a 6 instead of a 15. This happens because the A15 rig's mesh is different, causing the texture to wrap around it incorrectly. Thank you for watching until the very end. Consider subscribing as this video took a very long time to make and to also be notified if I release episode 2 of this guide. If you encounter a problem I haven't discussed, feel free to contact me on Discord at @tactical_, but please note that I'll only respond to DMS about issues not covered in the video. If you're aiming to become a render artist or UI artist, I recommend checking out the Dev Central Discord. You don't have to be active, I personally don't chat there, but simply reading it from time to time can be incredibly valuable. I also suggest exploring the 3D Graphics channel in the Hidden Devs Discord. Links to both servers will be in the video description.